Okay, so good morning, everyone. This is today's open research office titled Common Errors When Registering a Study in Central Study Registration, which from here on out will be referred to as CSR. Today's speaker is Kim Brunton, Associate Director of Operations for the Clinical Research Office. Today's session obviously is being recorded and will be posted to our website at a later date. And today I'm trying something new. When you close out Zoom, instead of me sending you guys the survey via email, you will receive it as soon as you close out Zoom. It is only 5 questions. I'm asking you to please make sure that you complete it. And with that being said, Kim, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you. And welcome to everybody. I'm glad that everybody could kind of has the interest in figuring out CSR a little bit more. I just want to kind of briefly go over what CSR is, and then we'll go over some of the frequent errors that I see, some omissions, and the tips for filling it out completely. So I'll do that. First off, the overview, again, is the goal is to have every human subjects research, all human subjects research done at the university registered in the system. Right now, the mandate is for all of the health sciences schools and any clinical trials from any of the other schools. I don't want to go over this in too much detail because you've all heard of this before. So it was created to streamline processes, and from the time that people or PIs decide that they're going to do a study or need to do a study, and right through getting everything together. This does not just mean IRB or IRB approval. So it helps with the early identification of different requirements, different resources that are available, and we can kind of help a little bit more. We needed a outlet to start with scientific review, so that is also part and parcel of central study registration. The real big advantage of this is that it begins the parallel processing for all of the different things that might be needed for the study. This includes IRB, any agreements that are needed, safety, grant agreement entries, those types of things. It allows you to start things, especially with your IRB. If you get it into central study registration at the time that you have a protocol, that's pretty much all that we need. Now you can start developing your consents and recruitment documents and things like that. And then when we have finished our processing, you'll have your things that you can finish and get the IRB submitted. We will never submit your IRB submission for you. We will, however, submit any of the other click entries that are needed, with the exception of safety, because there is a lot of information that's required from the PI and the study staff about that. The goal there is no redundant data entry. We were told a lot that there's that whole, I have to put it in this system and then I have to put the same information in another system. And so the big thing is, if you put the information into CSR, you should not have to enter that same information in any of the other systems that we have. Again, additional resources that you may not be aware of, the CTSI, and that UB having the CTSI has a lot of new resources that you may not be aware of that we can kind of help identify. And it also identifies any additional requirements, particularly if you're working with one of our affiliates, that may be required to start your project in a timely manner. Easiest way to get there, as you probably all know, is getting into, you Google basically UBCRO and you'll come up with this. You'll see the various radio or buttons here that will get you the different systems that we use. All right, so now getting into the form itself. And One of the big things that we see a lot is the preferred email is not there. So when we ask for the preferred email, this form will email automatically from the system. And whatever is in that field is the email that it's going to. So when you have an investigator that pretty much uses just his Kaleida or his ECMC or his GPPC email address, it is always going to defer to the UB address that they have. So if there's something that they monitor more, in order for them to get these communications, make sure you change out the preferred email. That is one of the biggest things that we see. The other is the expertise on study. Now, this is something that is fairly new and actually became needed because of the CTSI. And basically, they're trying to establish what team science is all about. And so when you've got somebody on a study that, let's say, is a cardiologist, that's fine, but they may be an interventional cardiologist. So it just kind of helps with identification of who's working on your study. The study contact, the highlighted thing is the biggest thing here. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen 5 and 6 entries of the same study because the person who had entered it could not see it when they went back into CSR. And this is why. If you are not named as a study contact, you will never be able to see this study. So if you enter a study into CSR and you have not put yourself in as study contact, when you pull into CSR again, you will not see the study. So make sure that you're always there. And again, that preferred email comes into play. This is how we are going to communicate back and forth with you through the system. Additionally, you can add as many contacts as you want. So if you have got other folks that are working on the project that may need the ability to see this form or have the emails of any communication about this form, then you can add them. Just it's simple. You add additional contact and another line will come up like this, and you can just add however many people are appropriate. When you go back in, you may see that I have added or we have added additional people. And those are this is how we contact and communicate with folks at the affiliates, other people within the university, other those resources that we may want to connect you with. So it may not always be just the 1 or 2 people that you put in. You may see 6 or 7 people there, and it's all people that we want to help interact or need to know about your study. This is one of the big things here is save progress. Save progress you will see many times throughout the form itself. And that will put it into pending. But save progress while you're filling out the form keeps whatever you have already put in. This becomes particularly important when you have uploads. So if you have different uploads and when you finally are finished with your form and you go to submit, it's going to do a validation to make sure that you've got all of those starred or mandatory fields filled in. And if you haven't filled something in, it's going to give you a red notice, which I'll go into a little bit later. But the big part of that is that at that point in time, if you have not saved progress up until then, any uploads that you have put in already are going to go away and you're going to have to re-upload them. So anytime you go down the form and you see that little button that says save progress, do that. The big thing is that you can go in and out of the form and you will see it under the pending tab for you. Um, one of the other things that we see a lot of is the type of protocol. So there is, basic science, biomedical, chart reviews, observational registry, interview, and a treatment or an interventional. And what that does is enables these fields down here. So with the different types of study that it is that comes up that you pick here, it is going to, which ones of these that you need. Now, the problem with that becomes if you have an interventional study and you put it in as basic science, you're not going to get all of these fields. And then I'm going to have to reach back out to you and find out what these how these should be filled in. Because when we process these forms, we will always change this type of protocol if you have not selected the correct one. Basically, we need to know about clinical trials, and that's kind of and the information that we need for each of those types of studies will be represented down here. I just want to point out, for those of you who don't know, anything that is green with an underline has some sort of a definition or a manner in which we would like it filled out. So if you're not sure, is this a clinical trial? When you kind of click on this or hover over it, actually, you are going to see what the NIH definition of a clinical trial is, which is what we use. And that's kind of something to kind of keep in mind. This section over here about the translational research, we added in I don't know, because we don't want you to sweat this. We can figure that out for you. We also put in the various hoverovers if you want to kind of educate yourself as far as what the different phases of translational research is. Local. That's the other. It's okay. So we ask about the local study enrollment. What is your goal? So if you go into a multi-center study that is expected to get 375 patients, but you only anticipate you're going to get six is the number that we need here. This helps a lot with how you're doing in reaching your enrollment goals. And tells us kind of where we are on track for a successful study. A lot of times there is a maximum allotted to either your protocol has a defined maximum. You're going to get, up to 200 patients. That's fine. That's where you're going to go with that. But sometimes contractually you have a maximum. Minimum, is probably always going to be one, but we want a minimum in there. And then the duration is in months, okay? And that's just for the enrollment. It's not the whole study. It's how many months are you going to be enrolling patients? We have a lot of studies that are, 3 to 7 year, 10-year follow-ups. So, but you are only going to be enrolling for maybe 18 months. So the 18 months would go here. The anticipated end date would be your 5, 7, 8 years, whatever that is. I kind of starred NCT number. If you have an NCT number, it's very helpful to me if you have that, if you can provide that. Basically, I mean, I will look it up if there's nothing there, but we need that for our affiliates as well as for our billing compliance. So if you have access to that, it would be much appreciated if you can put that in. Does anybody have any questions thus far? Okay. The IRB, this is This is something that we do also see a lot of. We do ask if you have already entered the study into Click IRB. And if you have, then it's not a huge deal. It's going to make that you have to do redundant data entry because now you have to fill out with this form. But what I sometimes see is, oh, no, I haven't. And then it's, oh, should I? And so they'll fill this form out and be absolutely honest that, no, I haven't started it. But then they'll go from this form and start one in CSR or in Click, what do you call it? Click IRB. So the thing is what we do is I'll show you exactly what we see. If it has not gone, our form goes out to Click and sees if there is something there, okay? And you've indicated that you have not started it in IRB. So we can load it by pushing this button. So that's what the difference is. So if you've already created something or have gone back and created something after you've done CSR, then you're going to create, we're going to be creating a duplicate. And that becomes very problematic, not only to the IRB, but also with how we manage the CSR. So when you have already put it in, this is the message that we'll receive, and that it indicates that it's already, and so we, as you can see, we don't have that green button. We can't load it again. When you indicate that you have already put your study into Click IRB, then you put in the Click study number, and then it will go out to Click. It will find out what the study title is, that you can just confirm that you have the correct study number in there. That's fine. Again, we can view it, and you can as well, view it in Click IRB direct from this button as well. Is this investigator initiated? So when we talk about investigator initiated studies, we're talking about studies that originate with a PI in UB. So many times we will have a collaborative study that is going on with another institution where a PI at that institution has started the study. And so in their institution is investigator initiated, but when it comes to UB, it is not. So you have to remember that investigator initiated studies are those that originate in UB. Sponsor protocol numbers, will always come up. If you don't have one, like I say, if it's one of those studies that have come in from another institution, a version date or whatever number that they are going by is fine to put in there, but because it is a mandatory field. Oops. And then for those studies that are industry sponsored, if they have already assigned your site number, we do ask you to put it here. What we do in this form as well is identify how things are to be billed. And in most cases, invoices have to go out with a study site number on the invoice. So this just saves people coming back to you and later times saying, okay, I have to send this invoice out. I need your study number. So if you have that, we do ask that you put that in. Let's see, there's a question here. Mention the process for exempt research, definitely. So exempt, if you are looking at your study for an exemption from human subjects research, then you do not necessarily have to go through central study registration. The exception to that are chart reviews. So if you are utilizing, especially one of our affiliates or practice plans charts, then we, as an institution, have to, by our affiliate agreement, have to be able to tell our affiliates what is going on research-wise in their institution. And this is the only mechanism that we have to do that with chart reviews. So in that instance, you do have to put them in. If you have something that is using, say, Sparks data or de-identified data coming from another institution, you do not necessarily have to go through a central study registration. This is not to say that it is wrong if you do. We can help you through that. If you are working with another institution, you're at minimum going to need a data use agreement in place. We can help you with that, but it's not necessary to go through CTSI. One thing I will tell you though, is if you are seeking an exemption from the IRB, you should always add a note in your IRB submission that says that you are seeking a determination of not human subjects research. What that does is takes it into a different pile. When the IRB intake coordinators look at submissions that come in, they're looking at it to put it in one of two piles. Either it is in need of a full board review, or it can go into the expedited. So things like surveys and whatnot. So if you are looking at something for it's as an exception, then you have to tell them it doesn't belong in one of those two piles. You need to put it into this other one, which will put it on somebody's desk for that assessment a lot quicker than it would otherwise be. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so sub-award from an NIH grant is the NIH number and is it the NIH number and the site number? Yes, Jeff, the site number, if they give you something that says that you are site 52, then we would like that in there. As far as subawards, they get a little bit different, but if they have this is basically the protocol number and the if there is a site number. So that's what we would like to see there. Okay. Oops, where did we go here? The budget, this is especially true for industry sponsored studies as well. I'm going to actually say it's especially true for anything that's got funding behind it. So a lot of times what we see, especially for NIH and NIH subs, is they will not, people will not involve our office prior to finalizing their budget with either the collaborating institution or putting their federal budget out. And what becomes problematic with that are there institutional fees that apply. So as far as our affiliates, they each have review fees that are come into play, and they will be charged. There is locally or within the institution a CTMS fee, which is our encore fee, which goes over, includes the billing, the coverage analysis, billing coverage analysis, if that is needed. But at best, we need to keep track of what's going on. That is the management through CTMS. Additionally, especially if you've got some of those interventional studies that are NIH, NIH subs, we can help with pricing. And so if you are getting, let's just say you're getting an MRI as part of your study, and it is not a standard of care MRI. If you do not go through some sort of pricing, we exploration, I guess, then when the bill comes in, it is going to say, you know, MRI, $3,200. And you think of your research dollars now, we have a negotiated rate with the institutions that may be $800. So it's always a good idea if you are, especially if you are utilizing one of the affiliates, if you have procedures within your clinical procedures within your protocol, that you reach out to Roseanne Johnson, who's our budget specialist here in the research office, and she can help with getting those prices, negotiating those rates. We end up, especially if you have are using one of the affiliates, we enter into a facility use agreement that puts out what all those charges are and what they will charge. Okay, I'll go back here. Should anonymous survey research start with click IRB if the survey? Yes, yes, that is true. So if you think your study is exempt and you put it into click IRB and they come back and say, no, it's not, you will be required to put it in through CSR. And no, we have a study in click, and then you'll enter it in that you have that study when you get to that IRB question. If it asks if you already put it in, then you'll just say yes, you have. With many, let's go back to budget here. So with many of these, you'll also see these little video links, and these our budget person in this case has put out a video that kind of tells you a little bit about what to do, how to manipulate, how to get to Roseanne. And so that will help you out. When you choose no here, I will always tell Roseanne they don't want you to negotiate the budget, but the budget needs to be reviewed to make sure that institutional fees are included. Again, remember, those institutional fees will come out. They are approved rates, and they will be charged to your grant or your account. We do ask if you are sharing your data or transferring your data outside of UB. So this does not mean those institutions or those multi-site industry sponsored trials. Those are all covered. This data use is all covered in the contract that we have with them. What it comes down to is we see many chart reviews that are multi-site, and so, or I'm going to be getting data in from Mayo that I'm going to be analyzing with my data. And just, you need to remember that anytime that you are sharing data outside of UB, or an institution outside of UB is sharing data with you, a data use agreement needs to be in place. And that is, it doesn't matter if it's de-identified, if it's, whatever. This also comes down to material transfer. So it's just, remember, it's not just a contract that needs to be in place, but the use of data has its own things behind it. Who owns the data? How can it be used? For how long can it be used? What happens to it later? So, and all of those things are identified in a data use agreement. And so those definitely need to be in place. And again, when you go through this, we will assess it and see and help you we'll start that for you. We'll get everything in. Many times, if they come up with a template, say you're getting data in from Johns Hopkins, they'll have a template DUA, and you can upload that in this form, and we can actually enter that for you. Our goal is to basically get everything that we can, take everything off of your plate that we can once you receive all this information. Investigational new drugs. Remember, it's an investigational drug or the administration of medication. So even if you are using an approved drug, then you are using a medication within the study. So this would always be a yes for any meds that are being used. If you have that IND number available. So if it is investigational, there will be an IND number associated with it. There are 3 systems that I need that number for. So my preference would be to have the little asterisk beside the IND number, but it's not always available. But if you don't have it, if you could reach out to the sponsor prior to entry or at some point in time during entry, then this is much appreciated, because I will have to reach back out to you to ask for it. We do ask, who holds it, which most often is the sponsor. Sometimes it's the PI. We do have a couple of PIs that hold their own INDs. What phase of the trial it is. And many times, if they are providing you with the IND number, they're giving you the IND letter. Again, this is needed in 2 or 3 different systems. Upload it once. You upload it here, we'll get it into the systems that it needs to be in. So that helps. As far as where it is going to be stored or dispensed, this helps with budget development. So if it is going to be in the practice plan that you're going to be dispensing from, that's not a problem. If it is through one of the affiliates, they have fees that apply. If it's through the CRC downtown, fees apply. So that has to do with your budget development as well. This is similar to the investigational drug device exemptions. Again, the IDE number is required in a few different places for me. What category of device it is, this has a lot to do with, again, with budgets. If it's category A device, the budget is negotiated very, very differently than a category B. And again, those letters from Medicare system and as well as the FDA IDE letter is, if you've got them, upload them. We can put them where they need to be. Okay. Funding, industry, it kind of is self-explanatory through most of it, but what it comes down to is the department. It's always going to default to the investigator's primary department, the department that they are assigned to. This becomes interesting when you've got faculty with dual appointments and they want to put credit through different, through both of their departments. So you can add an additional department and then put the percentage in for whatever, it must add up to 100%. But when we put in the grants application, then this all comes into play there. If I had to say there's one other thing that we, in this section that we see most often, is the contact name for contract and budget negotiation. And many times this will be a UB person, and that is not, is not who we need to. So what we are going to be doing is entering your contract into click agreements. And what we need to know is who at the company, who at the sponsor site, who at the other collaborative site is going to be negotiating that contract. This is the information that we need for this field. It should never be a UB person, unless that's the originating contract, which really doesn't happen. Federal subs, primary statement of work and the budget summary. Any information basically that you have about your federal sub award is very much appreciated. If you have a full copy of the sub award, a full copy of the grant, again, we have this add additional files. You can add as many as you need to, as many as you want. If it is a federal or a federal sub, we will most often ask you if you've been working with somebody in SPS. If you can provide us with that information, that helps innumerably, because we need to figure out, what has already happened. And so if you know the person to go to, that helps a lot with the back and forth as far as who we need to talk to. Study team. If you remember that little button I had that up top that said load into click, anybody that you put here along with how you've identified them is going to be loaded into click. So when you have a co-investigator or a sub-I, it's always going to ask you what their expertise on the study is. For study staff, it's not going to. You won't see that field. Before I go on, there's another chat here. Okay, should you upload the agreement first in Central or in Central Study or in Click? You will never load your agreement into Click unless it is a non-disclosure. So non-disclosure, you will have a non-disclosure agreement you will put in yourself because you haven't committed to a trial yet. But when you have an agreement that you are putting the study into Central Study Registration, then we will put it in for you. Do not put it in yourself. Again, that creates a lot of confusion when there are dual entries. What if you don't have the budget and final protocol? It's hard to negotiate those without you can't negotiate a full contract until you have that information, particularly the budget and the protocol, because we don't know all the ins and outs. Final protocol, you can probably get away with if they're in the midst of, doing a small amendment. But we do have to have kind of something as far as budget goes. Your contract will never be finalized without that final budget. So it's kind of horse and cart. Okay, so these two that are, you've got something back here. Okay. I'm gonna take that over there. So you're gonna put in whoever your team is. Again, this goes to the HR data feed. So you'll get the auto fill with most of those. Now, if you don't have, if it doesn't come up with an automatic, you can do free text in here. And when it goes into Click IRB, if they're students, then they usually will click in as a UB person. When you do put this in as free text, you'll see a little box over here that says non-UB. Sometimes, most often, that doesn't apply because they are students and just aren't in the HR feed. But you can just free text it, and when it goes over, it will automatically write them in. These two are the circled ones are the ones that we most often don't see and filled out and becomes problematic later on. So the question of are they involved in obtaining informed consent? That's a direct feed into the entry that we put in. And many times we will see 6 or 7 people as core study team and nobody identified as obtaining informed consent. The other is assigning a PI proxy. We have the ability at this point in time to assign that proxy out if it is noted here. If we don't, when we relinquish the IRB submission back to the study team, we no longer have that ability. It now has to go from the PI needs to go in and do that. If you designate yourself as a contact person, do you need to enter yourself in this section? Yes, you do. So again, remember the study contact at the top of the form is only pertains to this form. So it has nothing to do with IRB, because a lot of times we have office administrators that will enter the study into CSR, and they have no functionality within the IRB realm as study team members. So if you are entering the study into CSR and you have put yourself as a study contact and you are a core member team, study team member, you also have to put yourself down here. But PI proxy is one of the big ones that if you could do that, that's very helpful. This isn't clicking through. Protocol uploads. At minimum, I need a proposal. We can start things out with a proposal. It's best if we have the 503 and or the sponsored protocol. So if it is a industry sponsored study or something coming from another institution, then we consider that the sponsored protocol. And so you can put that in here. We can get things going while you get your 508 going. While you do your informed consent, those types of things. If you've got any other relevant document that you're going to have to put into the IRB at some point in time, and you already have them. A sponsor has sent you a regulatory packet, and here's your instructions for use. Here's your determination letters. Here's your investigator brochure. Whatever the case it is, you can upload as many of those things here as you want. Again, we'll get them into where they need to be, and you can double check it once it's all in there. But the long and the short of it is, when it says protocol upload, it's not limited to the protocol. You can put whatever else that you need in there. One of the big things is if you have already received some sort of formal scientific review through your department, if you can upload that documentation here, we don't have to send it through departmental scientific review through the system. So otherwise we have to send it for departmental review, which sometimes can make things go a little longer. Mary, I see you're on, and I know that the Department of Orthopedics. They have a very robust scientific review before things get to CSR. And so they always upload that that determination, and it saves just a lot of time because they know it's already been reviewed. And so that helps move things along a little quicker. Okay. This is where we get into that whole safe progress thing. So if you have done your safe progress or your submit, you will get these validation. And if it has not passed validation, you'll get the red or pink, I guess it is, bar that tells you what is the problem with the submission thus far. But safe progress, again, will help you out with a lot of that. When you submit for review, you can always, like you say, save draft, then you can always go back in and out of it with in the pending tab. Once you submit for review, you are asking for us to start interacting with that form and beginning to process it. So we don't process anything that is in pending. We don't even look at anything that is in pending, quite honestly. Once it comes in to submit for review, or when it comes into the submitted tab, that's when we start our process. So when you have filled out your form, you are going to submit for review. If you have things that are not filled in, you will get the red bar across the top, and that says that you haven't saved it successfully. Excuse me. And then it will go on to tell you what missing data you have or what missing fields are there. Navigating, the little magnifying glass here will always get you to where you need to be, to the form. And let you go that way. You can also see when it is in scientific review where things stand with that. And I think we're closing in. I'll leave about 10 minutes for any questions. Again, you can contact me anytime if you have any questions that come up, particularly while you are entering the study. It's a lot easier sometimes just to reach out if you're having problems. I can be reached at any time, as well as Alexis and Marshall are also available. I handle mostly anything that is funded, and Marshall and Alexis will handle anything that is unfunded or institutionally funded. Any questions that haven't come up already? Okay. All right. Thanks, Marshall.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kim. So everyone, thank you for attending. Remember, as soon as the Zoom closes, you'll be asked to fill out those 5 questions. Please be sure to fill them out. We appreciate it. And thank you for attending, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.